Welcome to Student Engagement in Google Meet. Hopefully after this session, you'll understand some better ways to engage your student in Google Meet and to have them buy in. As you can see as you came in, I had some music playing. This is a great way to engage your students right away. You can have a song playing already, or you can have students choose the song for the day, obviously school appropriate. I would normally have this slide up and ready as students were entering into the Google Meet, and this is a great way just to get your students to engage immediately when they come in. So this is a personal question. It doesn't have to be an academic question, but it could also be used as an academic small formative assessment of what they learned the day before. So it's a great way to start to get them engaged. If you do something personal, it's a great way to start building relationships with your students. So as they start throwing things in the chat, it's a great way to start an organic conversation between people, and it's great to watch them interact as well. So a question of the day is also a great way to get your students engaged. Here you'll see an agenda. An agenda is another way to keep your students engaged. This just allows them to kind of see what's happening for the day, maybe some materials that they're going to need to have in order to participate for that day. It's also just a great way for the kids to stay informed. And when students feel like they're part of the process and they're informed with you, they feel a whole lot more ownership of what's happening in the classroom. Class norms are very popular, especially now with Google Meet, and we feel like they're very beneficial as long as you're not just creating class norms to create class norms. So what we mean by that is it's great to have class norms, and we would encourage you to have your students help you build those class norms. So instead of me creating this slide and saying, hey, these are our class norms for the year, I would maybe come up with the be on time and mute your mic, and I would allow the other students to come in and help create the other norms. This one gives students the ability to feel like they own procedures and routines in your classroom. It also gives them the ability to understand why the norms are what they are. So for example, like camera on. If I just told a student, hey, I need your camera on, that doesn't really convey the right message. But if I said, hey, I know we're working on independent practice and I see that your camera's not on, so I can't tell if you're lost, confused, maybe you're working vigorously. So if you had your camera on, I would be able to see that as you're working. The student may then feel more ownership of why their camera is being turned on. They know that it's not just a rule for it to be a rule. They know that the rule is valuable because it brings information to you. So explaining the norms is also really important. So anytime you do anything with your students, explaining the why really brings that value to the student. Some best practices when talking about engaging your students in Google Meet. We've talked about the setting norms, but providing feedback is a huge one. Through the modules, we had an entire section on feedback and how important it is to be doing it authentically and often. It's one thing to provide feedback once in a class period, but if you're constantly engaging your students and providing feedback, it's going to really create that two-way relationship between teacher and student. We also encourage you to coach your students in delivering feedback to one another. So student-to-student feedback is so valuable, and it definitely creates that community feeling within your classroom. Student choice, so giving them the path of learning. The learning outcome is the same, but the way they get there may be different. And remembering to start small. A lot of times when we say student choice, staff thinks, let me just throw lots of options at them. Sometimes that's the exact opposite of what they need. So giving them maybe 2 or 3 choice options is ideal because they still have choice, but it's controlled. The more choices you give them, the more overwhelmed they tend to be. So just keep that in mind that starting small is perfectly okay. Student ownership, so allowing your students to set goals for themselves academically, whether it's daily, weekly, grading period. This allows the student to feel like they own the learning process. And then they're able to reflect at the end on, did they own it and do it like they said they were going to? You know, what were their challenges? What were some of their accomplishments through their learning? Student-led positions and roles, a lot of times teachers feel like this is only an elementary practice, but at the secondary level, students still really love having student-led positions and roles, whether it's attendance taker or question master or maybe coming up with the song of the day. Giving them a little bit of ownership over the classroom also helps keep them engaged. Intentional planning, as far as the teacher is concerned, making sure that your curriculum for that day or your assignment or your activity for the day really does allow for student engagement. If they're just reading a passage and regurgitating information, that's not really a high level engaging activity. It may be important, but it may not be super high level and engaging. So being mindful of when you're planning, being intentional about trying to create bits and pieces within your lesson that are engaging. So there's a link here for the synchronous versus asynchronous to Catlin Tucker, who is phenomenal, and she kind of discusses some different synchronous and asynchronous activities you can do while still keeping your students engaged. And then just making sure that you're switching it up. It's great if your students love Edpuzzle, but if they're doing Edpuzzle every single day for the entire year, they're going to get pretty tired of it. So just being mindful that changing it up is a good thing, but not so much that you can't keep up. So making sure that they're still understanding the tools that you're using to keep them engaged, but making sure that you're switching it up enough for them to feel like, oh, this is new. We constantly bring everything back to the modules. So we have this roadmap to the modules. So this is on our Learn Anywhere page. So if you go to our Learn Anywhere page, you will see that we have tons of resources. So based on the modules that we did. So under Evidence of Learning, you have some formative assessment tools. And what's cool is there's some tutorials on here. Effective feedback. This is a great one, explaining different things. You have some communications with parents. So going back to the modules, there's always really great material in here, some different ways you can do blended learning. So don't forget that that information is out there for you to use. So our sample lesson in this assignment or in this session is going to be using ClassKick. If you don't know what ClassKick is, it's essentially a tool that you can use to engage your students, and you can see it real time. So I'm going to show you an example of what it looks like. So when you click on this, it's going to open a thing for you to put your name in. It already has the class code in there, and then you would join. And when you join, it will give you whatever slides or whatever information the teacher has provided in the ClassKick. So I'm going to take you over to the teacher view so that you can see how this can be really engaging for your kids. So this is the teacher view. So this was the slide deck that I put together, that we put together to distribute to our students. And one is talking about synchronous, one is talking about asynchronous, and one is comparing the two. The great part about this is I can view everybody's work at once while they're working on it. So if this was a live session, you would be able to see there would be some black squares around the slides, and that would show you where the student is currently working. I can, as the student is working, go in here and actually look at what they've written. And so I could look at this and say, hey, I don't see anything written on your slide yet. Make sure that you write something on your slide or answer the prompt question, and you can give immediate feedback. And if they're in your Google Meet while you're doing this, you could be talking the entire time and having conversation back and forth. You can also give instantaneous feedback using the stickers. So you can create your own stickers. 3 of these are ones that auto-populated, and then I made 2 so that you could see how to create your own. But maybe I told them to choose an activity based on something I had just explained to them, and maybe they got this wrong. I would be able to pull over a sticker that says, that doesn't look quite right. Maybe try again or reread the prompt. Maybe they get it right. I could use a sticker and say, good job, and put it right on there as they're working. You can also tie points to the stickers. So say we had 4 slides, each sticker that was right would be 25 points, and by the end of it, they would have their 100. This is a great way to continuously give feedback to one another and for you to be actively looking at how they're engaged. So this tool is fantastic. It's super easy to use. The kids love it, and it's almost to the point where there is not a whole lot of pre-work that needs to be done in order to be successful in this tool. So some ideas to be thinking about as you're trying to engage your student, just like we explained before the meet, making sure you've set norms and make sure you're explaining the purpose. You saw that I was playing music. You could have an agenda slide up, maybe giving them a question of the day. Remember to have fun, be personable, be yourself. Any student that we talk to and we say, you know, why is it that you're really engaged in this class but not the other? The answer always has to do with them having a connection with the teacher. So making sure that they feel connected to that teacher in a way that they feel seen, they feel heard, they feel a part of the learning. And be yourself. When you make a mistake, let them know you've made the mistake. That even more makes you more real in their eyes, because to them, teachers are this, you know, unfathomable person that just teaches them every day. They're not real people. And this way they see that you are a real person, just like everybody else. You make mistakes and you learn from them. A quick activity to engage and hook them. This is something super, super quick. Making sure during the meet you're randomly calling out people. You can use something like Class Kick, where you're giving constant feedback. Maybe you're asking questions to specific kids. Maybe you have a randomizer, maybe a spin wheel with all their names on it. So making sure that they're prepared at any time to be called out on, to answer a question or a prompt or give feedback. Making sure you're checking for understanding often. Maybe have some norms put in place where if a student is confused, they put an emoji or they say something in the chat so that you're not leaving anyone behind. Constantly giving that feedback from teacher to student and from student to student. And then using synchronous apps. So making sure you're diversifying that material and you're creating an active engagement with your lesson. So a Padlet that we created to put all this information in, we have some things, some tips and tricks for student engagement in Google Meet. So you have things under welcome and check-in, during instruction, during small groups, and when you need that refocus or redirection. So as you can see, there's some different things here, like using timers during instruction so that they can see and hear and they kind of know what their times are, having music as they come in, allowing them to choose the music, maybe picking a student once a week to choose the music. When they need some redirection, giving brain breaks, letting them run around their living room for a few seconds. Just like us, they need to remove themselves from the screen every now and then in order to stay completely engaged. So these are some great ideas given by Mesquite ISD teachers on different campuses in Mesquite ISD that have worked for them. So this is a support tool for you guys to use so that if you're ever wanting to maybe understand, maybe during instruction, how to better engage your students, you can find some examples right here in this Padlet. We want to thank you for coming to our session today and being actively engaged, as well as learning how to actively engage your students in Google Meet. And we hope that you learned something today in the sense that getting them engaged, you can start simple. Start with just making sure that they're engaging right when they come into the meet. Once you've kind of narrowed that down, then trying to really make some of those activities that happen during the learning engaging so that they are actually actively engaging with one another and with you. Wow.